Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. My name's David T. Kramer, and today I'm going to talk just a little bit about epistemology. Briefly introduce the concept of epistemology. Epistemology is the study of knowledge. How do we acquire knowledge? What is knowledge? Where does knowledge come from, and how do we acquire knowledge? The epistemological question is, how do we know what we know? We recognize that all of our knowledge begins with consciousness. We are conscious of that which exists, including ourselves. So when we begin to examine epistemology, one of the first questions that we have to answer is, what is the mechanism of consciousness? In other words, what is the metaphysically given which allows consciousness? Did you say the nervous system? If you did, you are correct. We are connected to that which exists by neurons. The nervous system is what allows consciousness. It is the nervous system that allows us to be conscious of that which exists. Neurons are the basic element of the nervous system. Neurons are biochemical electrical cells. Biochemical electrical cells which respond not only to each other, but also to the external world. The nervous system itself is made up of billions of neurons. Some of these neurons we call sensory neurons. We have sensory neurons located in the eyes, the nose, the ears, the tongue, the skin, and those sensory neurons respond to physical energies in the environment. As sensory neurons respond to physical energy in the environment, sensory data is sent to the brain by those sensory neurons. And the brain, made up of billions of neurons, will construct percepts out of that which exists. In other words, the brain constructs perception out of that which exists. Perception is a construction that results from sensory data being sent to the brain, and then the brain constructs a perception out of that which exists. As we interact with that which exists via perception, we then develop concepts which differentiate and integrate our percepts. This table in front of me, this chair that I'm sitting on, and this computer are all existents that I am aware of and conscious of because light waves are reflecting off of these objects. And that sensory data is sent to my brain, and my brain constructs a perception of those objects in my environment. But also, I differentiate between the table and the chair and the computer. They are different concepts. But at the same time, if I see another table, a different chair, a different computer, I know that they have similar features as well. So I'm able to integrate those percepts as well as differentiate those percepts. So we develop concepts as we interact with the environment, and those concepts differentiate For example, this table is not a chair. This computer is not a table or a chair. And also integrate our percepts, because when I see another table, I know that that concept applies to that other table, as well as when I see a different chair, I know that that concept of chair applies to that other chair, and I know that the computer applies to other computers as well. The concept of computer not only applies to my computer, but it applies to other computers as well. So I integrate percepts and differentiate percepts. My concepts allow me to do that. And we develop our concepts as we interact with the environment. But we also have this really cool thing that's called language. So I don't have to reinvent a lot of concepts. As I learn language, I'm learning a systematic set of concepts that are used to identify existence. Language is a systematic set of concepts which differentiate and integrate our percepts. Language is a systematic set of concepts that we use to identify existence. So as I learn a language, I am learning a connection to the objective world in which I interact. And if you think about thinking, how much of your thinking is based on language, sort of an internal monologue or conversation with yourself, using these symbols, using these concepts that we call language. Okay, the basic element of the nervous system is the neuron. Here we have a diagram of a neuron. And notice, as a cell, it has a cell body or a soma and a nucleus. And of course, contained in that nucleus is going to be our DNA. The DNA, the chromosomes of every cell are contained in the nucleus. Notice that when we're looking at this cell that we call a neuron, it has these fibers that extend out from the cell body at this end that are called dendrites. And then there's a long single fiber that is known as the axon that goes this direction, which then turns into terminal fibers, and there will be terminal buttons located at the end of this neuron. We said the neuron is a biochemical electrical cell. The neuron fires. It has what is known as an action potential. The electrical current flows in this direction. And when the electrical current reaches the terminal button, then neurotransmitters are released into a gap. This gap is known as a synapse. If we just change that presynaptic, take off the TIC and add an SE, we have synapse. And the synapse is the space between the neuron and the dendrites of another neuron. So neurons communicate with each other. They have this electrical current that flows in this direction, and neurotransmitters are released into the synapse. They plug in here, typically at the dendrite or the cell body of another neuron, and the communication process goes in that fashion. Sensory neurons, on the other hand, are not activated by other neurons, by the biochemical neurotransmitters of other neurons, but rather by physical energy in the environment. For example, when I knock on this table, it vibrates. It vibrates the air molecules, which vibrate my eardrum, which vibrate the fluid, which vibrates sensory neurons on the basilar membrane of the inner ear. And that sends a neural message to the temporal lobes of the brain. When I look at the table, light waves, electromagnetic energy, light waves, reflect off of the table and go through the cornea, the pupil, and then strike the retina. Here is a cross-section of the retina. And what do we find? We find these receptor neurons, really cool receptor neurons, rods and cones. And these are activated. They get that action potential, that biochemical electrical impulse from that electromagnetic radiation. And they are synaptically connected to bipolar cells. These cells here are bipolar cells. See that little cell body there? And then those are connected to ganglion cells, and a bundle of axons here from the ganglion cells are what make up the optic nerve. And then the optic nerve takes that message all the way to the occipital lobe of the brain, and the occipital lobe takes that sensory data and turns it into a percept, into a perception of that which exists. So as the light waves bounce off of this computer and those light waves enter into my eye, I get a sensory impulse which is sent to the occipital lobe of the brain, and the brain turns that into percepts. And then we differentiate and integrate our percepts and create concepts. We don't have to recreate the wheel, though. We don't have to recreate the language. We don't have to recreate the concept. We may create new concepts, but how cool is it that we're born into an environment, into a culture with language? Language is a systematic set of concepts that we use to integrate and differentiate our percepts. So that's the beginning of epistemology, the beginning of knowledge. We can say the beginning of knowledge is consciousness, and consciousness begins with our connection to that which exists. Okay, let's summarize this quickly with a little quiz. Epistemology is A, the study of germs, the study of sociology, C, the study of friendship, D, the study of religion, or did you say E, the study of knowledge? Of course, the study of knowledge. Receptor blanks are located in the nose, ears, eyes, skin, and tongue. Receptor A, neurons, B, electrons, C, organs, D, muscles, E, thoughts. If you said A, neurons, you are correct. Humans are conscious of many existence. True or false? Well, of course, it's very true. Language is a systematic set of molecules. Is that true or false? Well, in the context of what we're talking about here, that is false, because language is a systematic set of concepts. Okay, that's all for today, talking about epistemology. Thank you very much for your participation today. See you next time around. Goodbye.